high school percentile rank doesn't predict graduation rate. We know economic status doesn't predict graduation rate. In fact, close to 50% of our students are what's known as Pell eligible. The federal government deems their family not to have enough money to contribute to their college education. We provide financial aid. We know that the parental education level doesn't predict graduation rate. So we're kind of in the dark at the moment as to what predicts graduation. Although we've gone from a 30% graduation to close to 60% graduation over the past 20 years. So we've made enormous strides in working with the population as we go forward. In this sense, UIC is very much like the rest of America. It's urban, it's highly diverse. The underrepresented minority populations continue to grow. The majority populations as percent continue to decrease. It requires enormous research capacity, and those two pieces, which don't really come together at most of the universities, live here not simply side by side, but within each other. And as we continue to learn how that happens, we will continue to disseminate that information to the world. Our student population has more in common with our patient population, which is almost identical. It has more in common with our civil service, which is almost identical, than it does with our faculty population or advising population. In most universities, the students, the faculty, and the advisors are similar. It kind of allows you to use an ACT score or GPA or other kinds of indicators. As I said before, not so here. We provide about $50 million a year in financial aid. We provide about $55 million a year in free patient care. So as I said, we're kind of an enigma to the world, a ranking enigma. It's a top university based on the faculty, research indicators. If you simply looked at the ACT score of the incoming students, we would be ranked as a low to middling university. We were most recently ranked as 11th in the world for universities under 50 and 3rd in the US by the London Times. And especially because of that mix, it is what universities will look like in the future. It takes enormous energy to have a homogeneous student population. It is literally impossible. It's like getting every question wrong on a test because chance would work against that. At the same time, we live in a city, and you know this perhaps better than I do, that 40% of the families don't have high-speed internet. So how do you balance these things together? We live in a city where only one library in the entire city had Microsoft Office. That happened to be the Washington Library. It had 40 computers that had Microsoft Office. So as we sit here in an educational enterprise and say, that's okay, if you don't have a computer in the home, just do it in your local library, the answer is, I'm sorry, I can't do that in my local library because they don't have that software package. Students come prepared to be web savvy, they're not computer savvy. And we need to understand that difference as we think about the role of high-speed internet going forward. We did a survey this year for the first time. You couldn't get your email address until you filled out about 5 or 6 questions. We live in a city where 40% of the families have no high-speed internet connect. That's presumed to be the families who can't afford such. That was some of the discussion I walked in on here. As I said, close to 50% of our students are basically poverty level. 92% of our incoming freshman class has high-speed internet connect in the home. What does that mean for the students who don't have high-speed internet connect? They're not going to college. What is the correlation? What's meaningful in that correlation? Because we were dumbfounded. We would have assumed immediately that our families, being in the lower income ranges or spread across the income ranges, would have been very concentrated in that 40% without the high-speed internet connect. 8% are there. So those families that made the effort to get that and pay that dollar enabled their children in some manner that we don't understand. Or there's a correlation between those families and having purchased the internet that we don't understand. But we need to understand that relationship a whole lot better. And then whatever it is, make sure that that 40% of the families gets that is, so those kids can go to college. Because the cliff is just tremendous. So I charge you with figuring out what the is in that divide, because it's truly a digital divide, and it's truly affected the ability to go to college, and it's not strictly a function of economics. There's something else in those families that invested, and how do we make that happen, or how do we invest on their behalf in order to make that happen? What does that mean about MOOCs and online and blended education? So the good news for us is it means we can do all of that for our students and make all of those things available and not have to worry. We're about to ask a second question next year as we do this survey, which really is how much time do you have on the computer? You might have high-speed internet connected in the home, but it might be easier to get in the bathroom in the morning than it is to get on the computer for 4 hours for your blended class. And that's another piece we need to understand. How many people are sharing, how many families are sharing, extended families and as such. And understanding familial relationships in Chicago and different neighborhoods is not a simple situation. What does that mean for our patients and healthcare as we go forward? Do the patients who come to our hospital also have high speed at 92%? That would be terrific for them, because we can do healthcare in the home. What does it mean for those people who don't have? And which hospitals are they going to, if hospitals at all? So how do we understand that divide and what capacity there is? We live in a state that's declared, and in fact the nation has declared, we'd like to see 60% of its inhabitants have a post-high school educational experience. How do we deal with that then with the 40% who don't have high-speed internet connect, and this 92% break on going to college and not going to college, where he's coming to UIC and not coming to UIC, and what does that mean? And how do we think about, in particular, MOOCs and democratizing education in one sense, and individuals who have no access to that in another sense? And how do you use high speed not simply to educate people like us who want to continue to educate, but already self-educate in one manner or another, and those who are not self-educating at the moment through literacy issues? How do you bring new learners into the system, which is really the challenge, to get to 60%, not simply to add to the educational load that many of us already have? And I think that's a unique challenge for high speed or high band internet connecting. How do you teach literacy? How do you teach people to self-educate as one goes forward, or how do you make that available again to the population that doesn't have access? And so these are the kinds of challenges we face here at UIC on a regular basis to understand. So how do you go into Austin or Pilsen or Englewood and find those individuals and make something available so that they can actually become now learners? And what's the role of high-speed internet connect in that realm, not just simply the businesses and so forth and enhancing what's there?